If Levi Haines actually gets a 5th year of eligibility, he should take it. Absolutely. If you're Penn State and Levi Haines, you should want that.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. Thank you so much for being here as we are talking Penn State wrestling lineup analysis, the possibility of Levi Haines getting a 5th year, the chess move that Penn State could make with true freshman Jayden James. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. And I know, well, the NCAA said one thing, but the courts might say another thing. So that's where we will kick things off with Levi Haines and the possibility of being in the lineup, but why Penn State should absolutely want that. And then we'll get to the Jayden James part of it and what Cael Sanderson could plot to actually maximize James's eligibility. So for Levi Haines's case, I think him and Penn State should absolutely want a 5th year of eligibility. I mean, that's a guaranteed national title contender. That is your captain. I know Penn State wrestling doesn't have captains, but if there was one, right? We've heard Cael Sanderson talk about Levi in such a way that he is the epitome of Penn State wrestling, the current state of Penn State wrestling. And, well, what about the future of the lineup or getting some guys in? I understand that argument. But Haines isn't some holdover either. He hasn't, at the time of this conversation, right? He still has yet to turn 22 years old. I wanted to get an actual correction on that to see actually how old he is. He is 21 years old, and he finished up 4 years of school. No red shirt, no nothing. 4 years in, 4 years out. But if he gets granted that 5th year of eligibility, absolutely take it. You get a true national title favorite at 174. So there's really no debating about, well, what should happen, who should move where, should somebody go up? So you kind of answer all of those questions by having Levi Haines come back as a Hodge Trophy contender. And I know Mitchell Mesenbrink just won, but Levi Haines is still that. He is still one of the faces of the team. He is still one of your captains, a leader, everything that you could ever ask for from a Penn State wrestler. And you get him back for an extra season in the lineup, you take that. You absolutely take that when I know that Oklahoma State is pushing and what have you, but you still want your lineup to be the best possible lineup. And that lineup includes a 5th year senior in Levi Haines at 174. So how would this happen? Because I think some people are going to say in the comments, well, the NCAA said they're not granting any extra eligibility. Honestly, what the NCAA has to say doesn't matter as much. And that's not me voicing my opinion. That's me trying to say that the courts, the legal aspect of it, the NCAA might want to say one thing and they might intend to do another. But the way that this is trending, I would probably expect Levi Haines to get granted a 5th year. Because a bunch of basketball players, this is actually happening. This is tangibly happening right now. But a bunch of basketball players that did not use a red shirt are getting together. They're already 50. It's basically a class action lawsuit where, and forgive my legal jargon if I'm off, if I'm off case here. Okay. So, but I want to try to summarize it for everybody that there are 50 or so basketball players at the time of this conversation being represented right now to get a 5th year of eligibility. And I am not surprised by that at all. So this means that if those basketball players are going to get a 5th year of eligibility, then what about a wrestler? What about another athlete for another sport? And I'm not surprised people are suing because, of course, it doesn't seem entirely fair that the athletes who did not use their red shirt, they are conveniently left out of the new rule system, even though everybody else gets an extra year. They just are conveniently out of the consideration for it. So when it comes to a legal standpoint, this can absolutely be challenged. And I don't know that I'm rooting for a decision one way or another. Like, of course, I would want to see Levi Haines wrestle for Penn State one final time for another season. But just from the actual reality of it, Haines can get a 5th year if there's some sort of injunction, because this isn't going to be able to go through a whole court system at the end of the day. But if a lower circuit court, as we have seen here with the amount of challenges against the NCAA, goes in favor of the student athletes, then just like that, Levi Haines has a 5th year of eligibility. And if you're Penn State, you're not going to say no if he wants that. Would Levi Haines personally, because we talk about this from the Penn State perspective, would Levi Haines want a 5th year of eligibility? I don't see why not. He could say that, hey, I'm going to focus on freestyle, the Olympics, training for everything year round, being the best freestyle wrestler, right? Because it's different from folk style. You got to take away from the freestyle aspect to train and focus on folk style. And maybe Levi Haines is just done with it. But I still view it in a way as a challenge. It is a challenge. Just because he's the favorite does not mean that it is not challenging to go and win a 5th Big Ten title, to go and win a 3rd NCAA title. That's still a 174 class that doesn't have a ton of turnover. Okay. So even though Levi Haines would be the favorite and most people would pick him to win, I still view that as a challenge, just objectively. And Haines, I imagine, would probably think the same thing. Does he think that he's too special to go and not compete against some of the best wrestlers at this level? So that Penn State wrestlers in general, they view this as an opportunity to get better, because that's a long season, a lot of ups and downs, and Levi operates the way that he does. It's still difficult at the end of the day, even though Levi carries the pedigree that he does. So the only question mark would be, what's going to happen at 57? I guess 33 and 41 and technically heavyweight, but there's no debating 3 or 4 different wrestlers or spots, 3 different spots and 5 or 6 different names, right? The conversation becomes a lot more simple where it's just 57, and can PJ Duke make the weight cut? Or is this going to be a Joe Sealey versus Tyler Kasak battle? Because 125 is solved. I think 133 and 41 are solved. It's just, is it going to be Ono at 33 and Blaze at 41, or Blaze at 33 and Ono at 41? 49 is Shane Van Ness. 57 is the question mark. Is PJ Duke able to cut to 57 again for another season? And we talked about how difficult that was. And, well, if you ask Jeff Byers, Tyler Kasak is still insanely talented. So there's going to be a wrestle-off for that spot. But I know who most people would pick in that battle. Mesenbrink's at 65. Haines is at 74. Welsh is at 84. Barr's at 97. Heavyweight, Connor versus Cole Mirasola. They're twins. Kind of interchangeable with the results at that point. Cole's been training there, but Connor looks great since he's moved up to heavyweight for freestyle, for what it's worth. But that's how the lineup conversation goes for the present, right? For this upcoming season, 26, 27. And we'll see how it plays out. But just because the NCAA says, hey, we're not granting this group of athletes an extra year of eligibility, does not mean that the courts are going to say something different. And that means Jesse Mendez and a handful of other athletes could potentially come back for another NCAA season. But if I'm Penn State and Levi Haines, I welcome it. And he's not going anywhere. He's staying in State College. He's staying with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. So great. He gets another season as a part of the collegiate team. But then there's the next part of this equation, because Jayden James was in this lineup scenario with PJ Duke, Joe Sealey, right? Who's going to move around? Who's going to go where? 57, 65, 74. And here's how Penn State, they're going to get Levi Haines back, then they would absolutely need to do this with Jayden James to maximize his eligibility. And it's strategic. I'll tell you about it coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now, FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you got to do is turn on your token. And we'll be looking for those kinds of matchups where both teams are aggressive offensively, because those are the games that can open up fast. The more chances being created, the more exciting the match becomes from beginning to end. And now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started right now. That is FanDuel.com. One more time, FanDuel.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working towards the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. Take Penn State hiring Matt Campbell, for example. The adjustment itself was important, but what's been really impressive is how smoothly it's all been implemented. Everybody knows their role. Everyone's on the same page, and that's usually what separates a great team, a great organization from just a good one. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That is odoo.com/lockedon. So what strategy could Penn State have in place for Jayden James, part of the class of 2026, but maybe he isn't? This is the strategic move that Penn State could make with James. Have him defer a year. And I thought that was hearsay, not really a possibility type of deal. And maybe he does enroll as a Penn State full-time student when all's said and done. But what if he doesn't? If he doesn't, that isn't complicated with the new NCAA eligibility rules, because I thought there would be a bunch of hoops to jump through, and maybe Penn State finds a way and there would be a lot of gymnastics to get this done. But no, it's just as simple as he doesn't enroll. He doesn't enroll. He's graduated high school, but he's just 17. He's 17 turning 18, so there wouldn't be a loss of a year because the eligibility clock starts on your enrollment, or it starts after you turn 19. So Jayden James would still be within that year threshold to where he gets 5 years. What does deferral look like? It just means that this is different than a red shirt. How he would train, where he would train, what he would do, I'm not sure how that would all work. But I think this is a no-brainer type of situation, especially if you get Levi Haines back for a 5th year. You try to find a way to have Jayden James train at as close to the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and as close to proximity to Penn State as possible without being a full-time student. Because that's how you maximize the eligibility rules, is you just have them defer that first year. Makes a ton of sense, because then Mitchell Mesenbrink's gone. Levi Haines is gone. 65 and 74 open up. So perfect. PJ Duke goes, I think he should be at 74. I know the weight cut to 157 is difficult. Jayden James is wrestling right now, right around 163, 165. He is a younger wrestler, right? We typically see wrestlers come in. We see some wrestlers. I don't know that I want to say typically there, but we see some wrestlers come in older, and they're already kind of in their prime as a college student athlete. But Jayden James, so he could grow a lot more, but it means he could also cut weight maybe a little bit easier. With that being said, the lineup isn't as overly complicated now. If you can get James to defer, and then 57 becomes a battle of Kasak and Joe Sealey once again. 65 would probably go to Jayden James, or it goes to PJ Duke. I feel like that's a coin. I feel like we're splitting hairs at that point. That's a coin flip. Okay. The difference between PJ Duke at 65 and Jayden James at 74 or vice versa, there isn't much. Whichever one's going to be better for each wrestler, have that figured out. Okay, well, what does that mean for someone like William Henckel? I do believe that does complicate things. Same thing with Asher Cunningham, right? But we understood that the 5-for-5 eligibility rule was going to change a lot of things, where you couldn't redshirt somebody and then they don't lose a year of competition. Now you get 5 years to compete. And I think that's going to spark a lot of other lawsuits, if I'm being honest with you. Just generally thinking out loud here is what about the wrestlers who have to adopt these rules that they used a red shirt, right? Tyler Kasak, for example, Joe Sealey, they used a red shirt under the old rule system. Well, if this new rule system is in place, would you have approached this a little bit differently? Probably. Most likely, yes. Different conversation. But when it comes to Jayden James, no brainer, honestly, to have him, if he's able and willing to defer that first year and then come in as a part of technically the class of 2027. Especially, even if you don't get Levi Haines back, even if you don't, let's say Levi Haines doesn't come back for the 5th NCAA season, it's still more strategic to have Jayden James come in the following year and being a full-time student, because then, okay, let's shuffle the lineup again. You could have Tyler Kasak and Joe Sealey battle for 57. I still view that as a battle, even if PJ Duke's not a part of that equation. I think that's a battle in itself, because Joe Sealey's impressed me a ton on the freestyle circuit, and Tyler Kasak is still Tyler Kasak. Mitchell Mesenbrink at 65, and then at 74, PJ Duke and William Henckel would have a wrestle off. And now you don't need to throw Jayden James into the mix when you can maximize his eligibility. I think eventually what will happen with the William Henckel dilemma, if you will, if we want to call it that, is that Henckel can stick around. I don't think he has to transfer out. It just means he would have to be more patient and probably wait and wrestle for 184 when it ultimately opens up, when Rocco Welsh moves on. So don't think because, oh, this wrestler is going to lose another year in the lineup because somebody else has to move around and objectively they're better. At least we perceive them to be better, right? PJ Duke versus William Henckel, for example. That means somebody's going to lose out. Yes, it does, but it doesn't mean it's a one-way exit for them to hit the transfer portal. The NCAA 5-for-5 rule is just not simple. It's just not cut and dry, especially when the NCAA makes these rules. But since these guys they're student athletes, they're basically contracted. That's what they are. They're contracted. So if the rules don't make sense logistically with the law, then that's why we're seeing all the courts and the way that they rule in these instances. So I agree with the NCAA making a 5-for-5 eligibility rule. At the same time, you are going to step on a lot of toes, and you're going to, and then you're going to accrue a ton of lawsuits by doing that. Again, imagine if Levi Haines had an actual grievance. I think he'll let whatever happens. But Haines or these 50 other basketball players that are actually collectively suing the NCAA for more eligibility. That's what I mean. How can you tell them you don't get another year of eligibility? Why? The simple question is why? I guess you can say, well, because you already graduated and you already played or you already competed for 4 years. Is that a good enough reason? No, I don't think that might make sense to some people, but again, just because you're 1 year away from the new rule system, that therefore you just automatically don't qualify. That's why the courts are going to decide that, because it's unconstitutional in some regard. I don't know all the legalese to it, but something to keep an eye on here. I do think we're going to see that injunction go in where all these athletes get a 5th year of eligibility, and then it's really going to complicate stuff. I saw Justin Bash suggest this. Could a transfer portal open? Could an exclusive special window for the transfer portal open up with the NCAA moving to the 5-for-5 eligibility model. And I don't see why it wouldn't. So that's something to potentially monitor in the not too distant future. And we will talk about it accordingly if it does actually happen. That is where we're going to wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host as always. Again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Do you want to see the future in the present right now? Or do you think Levi Haines should get a 5th year of eligibility and should use it? I want you to be a part of the conversation. And what Penn State should do with Jayden James, try to get him in to compete right away or defer his eligibility. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts so you do not miss conversations around Penn State wrestling, Penn State football, Penn State recruiting, all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.